Quite literally, I only have the Canon EOS R10 for only 24 hours as the camera is on rental. So in today, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be showing you two different types of methods to use the Canon R10. One being more casual, family oriented, going out into your backyard, shooting some birds, shooting some cats, shooting at your lawn and some trees. And on the other spectrum, on the next day, I'll be going over to visit one of my corporate shoots, which is an event videography. So you can basically see the contrast between having to use it for leisure and using it for work. Does it actually work for you? But in this video, we're going to be highlighting only for video, as photo is going to be a separate video to talk about in the near future. So during the second part of this video, when I talk about the event videography, there will be some sample videos, but if you have light sensitivity and light seizure proneness, I highly recommend you to steer clear from watching the second part of this video. I will let you know when the light seizures come in. Alright, so let's begin. So the Canon R10 coming in at only less than 1000 USD, it seems to be a very promising camera for the most entry-level beginner enthusiast who wants to go into video and photo hybrid video cameras. And that's what I thought, so hence I went out away to rent it for a day. Now, my use with the Canon R10, let's look into ergonomics first. The Canon R10, somewhat looking, it is kind of missing a lot of these dials and buttons and wheels in which a normal professional DSLR or mirrorless camera should have. So changing in focus, example, changing in your ISO, changing your aperture, it's all mapped towards the same button. So you basically need to tap on the screen to change a setting. Now this is to be expected for lower entry-level camera models, and you don't necessarily need that fast racking in focus or the fast changing of settings with manual buttons. Every single button added into the camera is added cost. Again, you're only paying 1000 for this camera. So this camera's first limitation is the limited amount of buttons in which you can have access to. Now let's look into the second category, which is the LPE17 batteries. The LPE17 batteries have very limited charge capacity in them, and shooting your camera in 4K or just shooting at 1080p in video mode, you possibly can only get up to, realistically, 1 hour and a half or 2 hours kind of shoot. So in my case, for my 6-hour event with periodic switching on and off, recording on and off. Now with all the videos I've recorded using the event, thankfully my second shooter, which is my cousin by the way, now he doesn't know much about videography, so he uses only 1080p mode at 60 frames per second, and you'll be really good to know that by having the smaller battery, the R10 with Digic X performs really well. The battery life on that thing can basically last over 6 hours with the camera periodically turning on and off, using it for the entirety of that whole event and not even blinking red at that point. So needless to say, although the battery is small, thumbs up for the battery capacity on the Canon R10. And of course, the other minor thing that I've noticed is into the volume that it's going to be playing back on your videos. Now, volume playback can be easily accessed by pressing in back the playback button and looking through your volume. Now, the maximum volume which you can go in the Canon R10 surprisingly only reaches at 8 bars. Now, comparing that to my R7, the R7 can go up to 15 bars. I'm not too sure what's going on here, whether there is in fact an audio difference between the Canon R7 to that of the R10. Again, I only have it for 24 hours, but of those of you who are using the Canon R7, there is a setting in which you can change your sound recording to be lossless. It's not entirely lossless, but it's somewhat providing a better quality audio in return for data storage space. So turn that on, you can get really good sounding, high quality, not WAV format, but you get a higher quality audio recording. I'm only assuming that the Canon R10 shoots video, however, with a lesser quality audio coming in from the natural input mic. If you have a shotgun mic, that will be a different ball game. And moving on to the size and grip of this camera, mounting my 70-200 Mark I 2.8 on this camera, it's a breeze. I pretty much enjoy the grip behind this camera. It's well thought. Like, it doesn't slip away from my 4 fingers. It's actually really nice to grip the camera and to use it outdoors when I'm behind my backyard. So here I have some recording options mode on the screen. So some of these videos are shot in 4K 24, 4K 50 or 60 frames, 1080p at 120 frames, and 1080p 60 frames, 1080p at 24 frames. Now, I must say, in this day and age with Digic X processor, Canon has indeed stepped a great step in the forward direction, competing with other mirrorless brands like Sony, because most of the cameras utilizing Digic X processor is very much capable to autofocus even in 1080p at 120 frames per second. This thing is a luxury and it only exists in the 1DX Mark II back when 2019 was Canon's downfall. And now from the fact that Digic X now made available for all of these cameras like the R7 and even cheaper the R10, you basically still have autofocus on eye detect, animal detect in 1080p and 120 frames per second. And here are some real-world applications on why this is a big thing. Now look, for example, when I'm using the 70-200 and I'm out bird hunting behind my yard, I look through the screen and I see there's a couple of birds up upon the parchment and they're flying across from the park. So what do I do to get a good shot of these birds? I slap on the 70-200 on a 1.6x crop factor R10. Now if I want to get more reach, shoot in 4K 50 frames, and I can get basically an additional 1.7 times crop. Now when you're shooting in such a crop mode, it's insane the reach that you can have, and it works. Shooting it at 4K 50 frames with animal detect, it glues onto anything that flies past the screen almost instantaneously. Now this is Canon's beauty mark of Digic X, proudly being presented to you in a under $1,000 camera. So in the video world, you have many delicious tools to play around with. The 4K world you have at 4K 50, 4K 60. Now do mind that because this camera isn't so capable like this brother R7, which is what I'm filming right now, the 4K 50 and 4K 60 will incur an additional 1.74 times crop. So if you're shooting in with a lens, the 16mm, you're going to be getting a 24 to 28mm equivalent at 1.6 crop, naturally, as you know, you guys are using a crop sensitive camera. But switching into 4K, it's gonna incur a very serious 1.7 times crop, leading your 16mm to look close to about 44mm. So can you imagine the amount of data that you lose from your lens, right? So what are the problems that incur when you're trying to crop in so far? Well, let me play this clip and chromatic aberrations is heavily emphasized when you're trying to shoot in 4K 50 or 4K 60. The reason is because as you're cropping into your lens, you can start to notice as though you're zooming into a picture and you're pixel peeping between all of the different things, the surfaces. So when you're shooting just like a branch or a tree, light tends to reflect off them and hit at your camera and bounce around the barrel, thus producing chromatic aberrations. Now, if you're using lenses like pretty old ones, the Canon EF 85mm 1.8, this lens is known to have really bad coating. In fact, most of the Mark ones from Canon have pretty bad coating to begin with. And so it really does show. And there's just no way you can escape having the fact that there are purple or green fringing that's happening on the subjects. It's just bouncing in a really weird way, and I think this is the biggest compromise as to why I would never shoot in 4K 50 with the R10. So needless to say, if you are planning to get a camera that's capable of shooting 4K 50, you might want to look at R7. The R10 does it, but almost reluctantly, because every single thing, every single imperfections of your lens is now emphasized, because again, you're zooming in and you're pixel peeping onto that big barrel full frame lens. And I just don't particularly like that fact. I think for the most part, I will stick to using 1080p at 60 if I want to use the R10 for slow-mo work. However, needless to say, shooting into the 4K 24, it's a bliss. I really do enjoy this camera. As you can see, it's pretty plentiful shot. Looking into the videos here, and these are all natural. I did not color grade them, and it is a little bit shaky. I'm sorry, it's a lot shaky. Well, the thing is, I have to be quick. I only have 24 hours. I don't want to set up my gimbal, and the next day I have this corporate event, so it's pretty shaky. I understand, but deal with it, right? So the footage that I get is plentiful sharp, plentiful details, and I really do appreciate that Canon came a long way. You know, coming from the fact that I came from the 60 Mark II world where videos tend to look like this. And coming from the fact that the 1080p on the R10 still looks pretty good comparing to the 4K world. So if you're out shopping for this camera for the sole purpose of shooting in 1080p at all frames per second, 24, 30, 60, 50, at 100 and 120 frames per second, you'll be really happy knowing that autofocus works in everything, and you'll be shooting it at only 1.6 crop for all of them. However, there is a certain thing that you can use to bypass the 1.6 crop. So what I have here is a Viltrox speed booster in which I'm going to be mounting onto the Canon R10, and here is a sample footage when mounted with a speed booster. As you can see, it gets closer basically to a full frame, but not exactly there yet because it is a 0.71x. I don't know, I can't math, but it's basically 0.71x. So utilizing 1080p, you basically get an almost full frame readout on a cheap below 1000 Canon R10, but do mind that the Viltrox speed booster is indeed a little bit pricey compared to other EF to RF or other Viltrox EOS M to EF adapter speed booster. It is a bit more expensive, but you get what you pay for it. You know, coming from the fact that you can shoot almost full frame on an R10, and you can choose between different adapters. You want to go for the Canon adapter so you can maintain 1.6, or you want to go for the full frame and then you get the speed booster. That's insane. Having that in the pocket, man, it's magic. I love the Canon R10 in all 1080p formats. Highly recommend if you are using 1080p only, this is a great camera. Now, where this camera excels, it does excel with 100% flying colors like a true scholar out from Harvard University. This camera truly does excel in people face detect as well as animal detect. There is no compromise to like, okay, this is a $1,000 camera, we're going to nerf the hell out of this. No, this is a proper video camera which can be used professionally for wildlife photographers, because when I look back at these videos and how fast, now when we look into videos how fast the autofocusing just snaps right on to birds flying past. Now this is real-time speed of the bird flying from the screen. Now, almost intuitively, when you're out shooting like me, there is no opportunity you can look through your viewfinder and, you know, instinctively pan your camera in like this, because there is a lag when you're trying to look through the EVF. So what you want to do as a bird photographer or a bird videographer like myself, I noticed that you try to anticipate the bird's movement and get your camera in the general position, like basically hip firing, right? So basically hip firing, and just basically try your very best to get the composition correct, and let the camera do the autofocusing work for you. Like, that's how simple and how powerful this small pocket camera truly is. You basically can command it to do the work for you, and you don't have to do anything. Just basically maintain the kind of position where you're trying to move the frame with the subject. That's about it. And I do really enjoy looking through these videos because it's a moment of triumph when you basically can get the footage that you're envisioning in your head as the bird flies through from the left to the right or right to the left, and your camera racks in focus, and you get in slow-mo, and you can basically go in slow-mo mode with the 7200. It's insane. I really do find the joys in life shooting wildlife photography and videography. So I really do love and recommend the Canon R10 for that purpose. Alright, so with this in mind, let us put a close to this hobby journey or endeavor. We're basically shooting in the backyard. Now let's look into a more proper workflow where you're basically getting paid to shoot for an event videography, and the lighting does change. So again, seizure warning alert here. If you have visual senses overload, you might want to be careful for this because there is a light show towards this video. Alright, so let's begin. Now on this date, basically a company called ODC, which is launching a product for a skin makeup or even AI magic eyes. You know, they basically can cure glaucoma while you're wearing this AI regenerative healing glasses. So they are launching their very first product in a hotel somewhere close to Malaysia. So then I went over there with the Canon R10 and my R7. So my R7 is going to be manned by me. So most of these videos are shot, you know, most of the videos sent to the client is definitely shot on my camera because I know what I want. But I went ahead and you know, took my cousin over for this project to basically shoot on the R10 so that I can give you videos, reviews on the R10. So my thoughts on the R10. Looking it side by side with the R7. So I am being really strict here because I am comparing it with a higher level APS-C camera. Shooting in low light event videography, you do not have access to great lighting. So first off, your lens needs to be really good. So it is not a fair comparison because again, it is paid job. I get paid to do this, so I pump everything into the R7. And what that means is that I'm pumping in the 24mm 1.4 with a speed booster on the R7. So I'm getting plentiful of light into the R7. However, I am neglecting the R10 by just giving it an EF to RF Canon adapter with a 16 to 35 f2.8. So there is a big marginal difference between f2.8 to 1.4, and you're even boosting the 1.4, so you're possibly getting like 0.95. So there is a big gap, right? So it is not fair, I know, but again, this is as close as I can get because I only have so limited amount of time with the camera. So these are the videos shot using the Canon R10. Now, also coming from the fact that the R10 was shot with no stabilizer and no gimbal, and EIS is turned on. So all of this footage that you see here, most of them are turned on, some of them are turned off. Now, turning on this thing has to give you a little bit more fluidness into your movements by cutting out major or minor shakes, but it does crop in and you reduce theoretically a little bit of quality as again you're pixel peeping or zooming in. Now, looking into the footage here, I'm okay. I'm not blown away again because I am shooting on a more pumped up camera like the R7 with good lens, but considering the lens that I have on the R10, it's possible, I guess. Well, yes and no. Like, to a certain extent, like in my career journey, looking back at this footage, I really don't think that it is professional enough. But for those of you who are starting out low entry level and you want to get into the event-based videography, I think that you will do wonders with the Canon R10. Now remember, that's what Jared Polin says, glass, 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 because you definitely need better glass on this R10. I can assure you, Captain, if you slap on my EF 24mm 1.4 with the Virtual Speed Booster on the R10, you will get outstanding, perfect results. Should you not go itchy and go 4K 60 and 4K 50, because remember guys, at those two modes, the Canon camera R10 does crop in 1.7 times more. So I generally don't recommend you doing that. So shoot only at 1080p at 50-60 frames per second. You will thank me later for that. Now looking into the performances, okay, let's look at a quick side-by-side comparison between the R7 and the R10. So I don't exactly remember what kind of settings I set on the R7, but on the R10 it's definitely at f2.8 at 16mm. So with the 1.6 crop, it's going to be like 27mm. I can't math this right. Then this is the video output, right? So I'm actually okay. It looks good. Like if I were to send this to the client's going to be super impressed, saying, wow, this is magic. Now looking at my R7, of course you can see again I have more light into my sensor, and I'm of course closer to the subject, so the subject looks, you know, like filling the frame, whereas the R10 is just static. Again, this is not of the fault of the camera. It's basically my cousin. He's not a videographer, so he wouldn't know what to do with it, right? Alright, so now that 24 hours have completed and I've returned the camera to its respectful owner, my thoughts on the Canon R10 is positive. If I have the money, if I want to go for a second body, if I don't want to upgrade from the R7 to any higher camera, and I want an APS-C which does really good as my backyard photography, or if I want to do a little bit of commercial work here and there, nothing too serious, the R10 fits the bill. Having only cost less than $1,000, you can invest you can invest more into lens, which is more important, and perhaps buying a few LPE17 batteries. The R10 truly is a remarkable piece of camera. Using it into my hands, I get so much joy using a body like this as opposed to using what the R7 really is. It is a more pro body, but I'm still enjoying the features that's included in the R10. Now there is also a no record limit on the R7, similar with the R7, as they both come out at the same time. So thank goodness for that, as now you can record full-length videos, events without pressing start and stop every 29.59 minutes or seconds. Now you can also power this camera up via USB charging with a PED rated power bank, which eliminates the use for having to switch the LPE17 so often. Alright, so that's pretty much it for my thoughts on the Canon R10. I'm super pumped up with Canon. Again, thank you so much for Canon for producing great products at below 1,000 price. That's basically unheard of. So again, if you're thinking about buying this camera, I would say go ahead, you know, nothing wrong with it. But do look out for the Canon R7 because again, you're spending an extra $500 for more professional feature. But if you just don't simply have the cash and you want to spend the cash somewhere else, the Canon R10 is truly a remarkable piece that will possibly last you 2, 3 years, 4 years down the road in terms of technology relevancy. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Rodric. Subscribe if you haven't already, as I'm trying to hit 500 subs by the end of this year. And I'll catch you again, lovely folks, the next episode.